I hate these movies. Alright, we're just gonna get that out of the way really early here. I don't want to make any of you think that I'm just gonna be gassing up these movies and telling you how awesome this universe is. This is more so I just want to talk about these movies one by one and kind of express why I don't like each one. And why I like a couple of them, actually. There's a couple that I enjoy. So with the release of Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, we now have, I believe, 5, right? 5? We now have 5 movies in this brand new Godzilla Monsterverse. This Monsterverse that is essentially the MCU meets big kaiju CGI nonsense, right? We also have a TV show that I'm not going to be talking about here. I have not watched it. I have heard good things about it, but I cannot garner the strength to sit through like 8 hours of this shit. But maybe I will one day. Either way, we're going to talk about the 5 movies here, starting with the 2014 Godzilla movie, everything that came out after that. We will not be talking about any of the other Godzilla movies. We won't be talking about Godzilla Minus One, unfortunately. I wish we would be. We're not going to be talking about any of the other Godzilla films at all. Just the ones within this new universe. Before I get into it, if you want to see more videos like this, go look at my channel. I make videos every single day, like rankings, reviews, all that stuff. Please make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications to see all of it, and let's just get right into it. Godzilla vs. Kong. How did this movie end up sucking as bad as it did? Obviously, Godzilla vs. Kong was like the end game of this universe. It's what they sort of imagined when they had first introduced Godzilla in 2014's new movie. They wanted to do a big, gigantic square-off between two of cinema's biggest and most iconic kaiju sort of monsters. And in 2021, we finally got it. We got what they had been building up to. A film where Godzilla, that we've been seeing in all these movies, who towers above skyscrapers and is just this massive force of nature, squares off against King Kong. Unfortunately, the movie's, it's boring. It's really boring somehow. One of my major issues with this movie, first off, the movie focuses way too much on the human characters that are involved here. We focus so much on Millie Bobby Brown and a bunch of other people that I can't even remember who they are, and kind of the conspiracies of this world, and finding this, like, inner world and the Earth, and trying to build the lore of everything. It focuses so much on that I can't even remember the reason that Godzilla and King Kong actually fight. Did we even really need a reason? But either way, it just becomes so over-convoluted and forgettable. I remember this is one of the first movies I saw after the COVID pandemic ended and movie theaters opened back up, and I was so excited to get back in a movie theater, and wow, a gigantic blockbuster in the theater to bring theaters back. There was something exciting about that. And then I remember falling asleep about 10 minutes into this movie and not really being awake for most of it. And maybe that's why it's last, and maybe I should go rewatch it before talking about it more in depth, but I don't want to rewatch it.
So I don't commit suicide.
Listen, when you get to the end of the movie and Godzilla and King Kong finally fight, it is very much a visual spectacle, a spectacle of CGI effects and monstrosities just going at it, and some of it works, a lot of it works, and there is a moment, sort of, I kind of compare it to Batman v Superman, where you're really, really into it. You've been waiting this whole movie, and it's finally going down, and you're into it, and then you're waiting to see who wins, and then it happens, and then they introduce a less interesting villain for the two characters to sort of join up and fight together. I won't spoil it in case you haven't seen this movie, but they fight somebody else, and it becomes kind of boring in the end, even the fights, and it just was empty, and it's my least favorite movie of this genre that I just don't enjoy. This movie's empty. It's one that I don't think I'll ever watch again. It's not fun. It's one of the things I feel like in some of the movies ahead of this, I'll mention, it leaned into the fun. This movie leaned away from the fun factor. It took itself super seriously. It's the worst movie in the universe. The brand new film, Godzilla x Kong, this is another one that I'll say, at the very least, it's better than its predecessor because they at least lean into the fun aspect with its humans' characters. Does that mean it's good? No. No, it's really bad.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
The human characters here are still boring. The plotline that the humans go through is absolutely nothingness. At least sometimes they are funny and enjoyable, but it is just cringy nonsense. The whole plot between Kong and Godzilla teaming up, I mean, it's a nothing burger. There's a bad guy they gotta fight who's just your generic big monster. It's a big red gorilla who visually looks cool, and I will say the one thing this movie does do extremely well is the visual stuff on the faces of, like, Kong and the other monkeys. They do a lot of good work kind of depicting emotions. There's better acting within the monkey characters than there are within the human characters. Mind-blowing. But this film takes so long to set up what you kind of already know going into the movie, just watching the trailer, that they're gonna team up and they're gonna fight this big red gorilla thing. And you're just waiting for it to happen the whole movie, and they're trying to give you information slowly that they gave you in about a minute in the trailer. It just, to me, it makes no sense, and I felt like I was wasting my time. I feel like I could have just bought tickets to this movie, waited an hour and a half, and then jumped in the third act, watched the final fight, and I would have gotten everything you were supposed to get out of this movie. And when it comes to the final fight, listen, if you like big, gigantic CGI fights, you're gonna enjoy the final fight of this movie. I'm sick of it. I think it peaked at, like, you know, at Pacific Rim. I think that's the movie that really kind of finished it off for me when it comes to these big, gigantic kaiju fights. I think I've seen enough after that, and they just do nothing for me. But hey, if you like Godzilla suplexing King Kong, you'll probably enjoy the final fight of this movie. It's nothing. There's no consequences. There's no stakes because you know who's gonna win. And then when they're just leveling an entire city, killing hundreds of thousands of people, and then they celebrate at the end, there's just something weird about it. It feels like the story of these movies, and some of them actually delve into it, the story should be the terrible destruction these things are causing and what it means to the people around them. That seems like the obvious way to tell this kind of story, but they don't. They don't do it. They destroy cities, they have big CGI fights, and then they cheer, and it's fun, and people like it, and they give their money to see this crap.
Shut up and take my money!
Godzilla King of the Monsters is the most forgettable movie, I think, in this whole franchise. I completely forgot this movie exists. I do think it's slightly better than the last two, despite the fact that it takes itself way too seriously, but it does have a few aspects that I like. First off, the visual style of this movie. This whole movie takes place kind of like in this dark, stormy sort of vibe and tone. Like the final fight with this blue kind of color grading and just the thunder and the lightning and the way the fires of Godzilla and the villain kind of light up the blueness into like a red. It looks really cool. This movie is visually the best looking movie of the franchise. I also think the marketing campaign in this movie did a great job. Whereas the newest movies don't really set up these major big fights as being something like a spectacle, it doesn't feel as big as it should. I remember the trailers for this one really kind of gassed up this idea that Godzilla's a god and this King Ghidorah, or whatever you call it, that big gigantic three-headed serpent dragon thing, is also a god, and this is a war. This is going to be a massive, massive war that the humans have to just kind of try to survive. And the marketing campaign here is just really well. The movie itself, it's just like the other ones. It's very boring. It's kind of darker than some of the other ones, which is, it doesn't really help its cause. It takes itself pretty seriously. You have Millie Bobby Brown, who does bring some light to the film, her charm, but yet again, not her best character, not her best performances. The fights, yet again, if you love the big CGI stuff, you're gonna love this. If you're not into that stuff, like I'm really not, it's just not gonna be your thing. Charles Dance is back in this one. We love Charles Dance, right? It's Tywin Lannister. Who doesn't love him? You get Mothra, who looks cool. There's really just nothing else to write home about. This is the most standard movie, I think, in the franchise. It doesn't really do anything new or different, but you know what? It's fine, it's watchable, and I think it's better than the last two. I'll never forget watching the trailer for this movie for the first time and seeing how big Godzilla was and thinking, wow, I am going to love this movie franchise. 13-year-old Joe was not a very smart man, let's just put it that way. Godzilla 2014 is a solid movie. It is a good Godzilla movie because it is the only movie that I think tried to tell a classic type Godzilla story where it's really sort of about the people on the ground looking up at Godzilla going, holy fuck, what's going on? How are we going to survive this? More so than Godzilla in a boxing match with monster number 5 and King Kong. Like, it's more so a very serious human story with Godzilla in the mix. And of course you do get those big CGI fights near the end of this movie, but it's not nearly as egregious as some of the other things in this franchise, at least. Godzilla is huge in this movie, and the way they shoot him is just incredible. Gareth Edwards understands cinematography, and he understands visuals with this character. The way Godzilla is framed, the way he's introduced, he is terrifying. He is a force of nature to be reckoned with. He is not some purple kind of Barney-looking motherfucker like he is in the new movie. He just looks really, really cool. The villains, or like the bad monsters, look really grimy and creepy and crazy, and just all of it is a little bit dreadful, which I think is really interesting. The way this movie also starts, it introduces sort of like a conspiracy story, adds an element to the human aspect that I like, the way that it seems like they're covering up Godzilla and what he's been doing and what the US government and Monarch knows about him. Bryan Cranston is in this goddamn movie, man, and this is right after Breaking Bad, where Bryan Cranston was at his height. I love this performance in this movie. He brings so much to this character. You get Aaron Taylor Johnson in this movie. You get Elizabeth Olsen, and I'm like 90% sure that they were like totally fucking in this movie, which is really awkward because, like, 1 year later they were, you know, in Avengers Ultron. They were, you know, I know they're not in, like, IRL, but yeah, come on.
You didn't see that coming?
Overall, this is a solid movie. I understand why this movie was successful, and I understand why it launched a franchise, because I could imagine seeing this in 2014 again and thinking, wow, it would be cool to see this iteration of the character fighting King Kong. That would be sick. It's not sick. It's just terrible. Why are we making these movies still? Kong Skull Island is the only movie in this franchise that I will literally go rewatch and enjoy. I think it is a very, very good movie that is different than anything else in the franchise. It's fun. It's a period piece type thing. It's got a unique location, really enjoyable characters to watch. It's got a adventurous vibe to it that the other films fail to really kind of replicate. Jordan Vogt Roberts is a director who I really love, and he just doesn't make enough movies, which is unfortunate. Tom Hiddleston's here, and he's great. You got John Goodman here. He's also great. Sam Jackson, all of these great actors really bringing out their personalities, their ability to really kind of make something interesting out of this movie. You get a King Kong who is awesome. He's huge, he's massive, but he still has that sort of heart and human connection that he has in some of the older movies that really helps audiences connect to him. The fights here are great. The colors are amazing. The music usage is really good. This is a great movie. This is like a 4 out of 5. Easily the best movie of the franchise. We need more stuff like this. So as you can see, I'm not the biggest fan of this franchise. I don't love it. I like Kong. I like the first Godzilla. The last 3, I could do without. Let me know how you would rank these movies down below. Let me know what you think. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, turn on notifications. I'll see you guys in the next video.